Before meal kits and takeout apps transformed American kitchens, there was ground beef and a dream. These mid-century dining rooms served up some of the most ingenious, budget-stretching, and surprisingly creative meals in modern culinary history. They're real dishes served to real families across America from the 1930s through the 1970s. Let's dig into 25 forgotten ground beef dinners that have faded into history. Porcupine meatballs. These emerged during the 1930s, when Depression-era housewives needed to stretch every ingredient to its absolute limit. The whimsical name came from uncooked rice grains mixed into the meatballs that would poke out like quills as they cooked. Ground beef got combined with raw, long-grain rice, diced onions, salt, and pepper, then rolled into golf ball-sized portions. The magic happened when you nestled them into a Dutch oven with canned Campbell's tomato soup thinned with water. After an hour of gentle simmering, the rice absorbed that tomatoey liquid, swelling up to create those signature porcupine quills, while the beef stayed tender. The rice essentially doubled the meal's volume, turning 1 pound of precious beef into dinner for 6. Kids loved the playful name and texture, while mothers loved stretching the family budget without sacrificing pride at the table. Cowboy casserole. The post-war suburban boom of the 1950s birthed this quintessentially American one-dish wonder that captured the frontier spirit without leaving the kitchen. Ranch families and city dwellers alike embraced this hearty meal that combined ground beef with canned beans, creating a protein-packed powerhouse. You'd brown a pound of beef with chopped onions until fragrant, then layer it in a casserole dish with pork and beans, kidney beans, ketchup, brown sugar, and mustard for that sweet, tangy barbecue flavor. Some cooks added bacon on top because excess was the 1950s way. The whole thing baked at 350 degrees for 45 minutes until bubbling and caramelized around the edges. The beans absorbed the beef drippings while releasing their creamy interior, creating a thick, savory sweet sauce that stuck to your ribs. This was cowboy food reimagined for suburban ranch houses, bringing Wild West mythology to Formica countertops across America. Beef and potato casserole. When Midwestern winters hit hard in the 1940s, this simple combination became the ultimate comfort food that required nothing fancy. This was peasant food elevated through sheer practicality. 2 of the cheapest, most shelf-stable ingredients transformed into something families actually craved. Ground beef got browned with onions and garlic, seasoned generously with salt, pepper, and sometimes paprika for color. Thinly sliced potatoes, often from the root cellar, layered into a greased baking dish, alternating with the seasoned beef. Some families added canned cream of mushroom soup between layers, while others kept it simple with just butter, milk, and flour, whisked into a basic white sauce. The casserole baked, covered for an hour, until the potatoes turned fork tender, then uncovered for 15 more minutes to achieve that golden brown crust on top. The beef fat rendered into the potatoes, creating an almost gratin-like richness that made this Depression-era staple taste like luxury. Beef and cabbage skillet. Eastern European immigrants brought this old-world technique to American stovetops, where it became a weeknight staple throughout the 1930s and 40s. Cabbage was practically free, lasted forever in cool storage, and absorbed flavors like a sponge. You'd brown ground beef in a large cast-iron skillet, breaking it into small crumbles. Once browned, you'd push it aside and add thick sliced cabbage wedges, letting them sear until edges caramelized. Then everything got stirred together with tomato paste, caraway seeds, vinegar, and a pinch of sugar to balance the acidity. The mixture simmered, covered until the cabbage turned silky and translucent, soaking up all those beefy, tangy juices. The caraway seeds added that distinctive Eastern European flavor that connected immigrant families to their homeland. This was comfort food that crossed the Atlantic, adapting to American ground beef while maintaining cultural soul and feeding families for under $1. Beef jambalaya bake. Southern Louisiana cooking met practical Midwestern sensibility in this 1960s fusion that brought Creole spice to casserole country. Traditional jambalaya required careful timing and constant stirring, but this baked version simplified everything for busy housewives entering the workforce. Ground beef browned with the Holy Trinity, onions, celery, and bell peppers, then got mixed with canned tomatoes, long-grain rice, beef broth, and a heavy hand of Cajun seasonings. Some added smoked sausage if the budget allowed. Everything went into a covered casserole dish and baked for 50 minutes until the rice absorbed every drop of that spicy, tomatoey liquid. The top layer developed a slightly crispy crust, while the bottom stayed moist and flavorful. This wasn't authentic New Orleans cooking, but it brought exotic flavors to dinner tables in places that had never seen the Mississippi Delta, making families feel worldly without leaving their subdivisions. Cabbage rolls. Polish grandmothers perfected these labor-intensive bundles that represented ultimate home cooking dedication throughout the early 20th century. Making cabbage rolls wasn't just cooking. It was an all-day commitment that showed your family they mattered. You'd boil a whole cabbage head until leaves softened enough to peel away without tearing. The filling mixed ground beef with cooked rice, minced onion, egg, salt, pepper, and sometimes tomato paste for moisture. Each leaf got a portion of filling rolled up tight like a present, tucked ends preventing any escape. The rolls packed snugly into a roasting pan, covered with a sauce made from tomato soup, crushed tomatoes, brown sugar, and lemon juice for brightness. They baked low and slow for 2 hours, the cabbage turning melt-in-your-mouth tender, while the filling stayed moist from all that steam. These weren't weeknight food. They were Sunday dinners, holiday celebrations, and tangible proof of a mother's love. Beef stuffed zucchini boats. The garden-to-table movement of the 1970s created this health-conscious approach to stuffing vegetables with meat. Suburban victory gardens produced mountains of zucchini that needed creative solutions. You'd have zucchinis lengthwise and scoop out the seedy centers, creating little green canoes. The scooped flesh got chopped and mixed with browned ground beef, diced tomatoes, minced garlic, oregano, and breadcrumbs for binding. This mixture packed back into the hollowed zucchini halves, mounted high and topped with shredded mozzarella cheese. They baked at 375 degrees for 30 minutes until the zucchini softened and cheese melted into golden brown bubbles. The vegetable's natural moisture kept the meat filling from drying out, while adding a subtle sweetness that balanced the savory beef. This was the 1970s health craze meeting traditional comfort food halfway. You got your vegetables and your ground beef in one neat, portion-controlled package that felt virtuous and indulgent simultaneously. Beef and biscuit ring. Church potluck suppers of the 1950s showcased this show-stopping presentation that made humble ingredients look fancy. The visual appeal mattered almost as much as the taste during an era when entertaining defined social status. Seasoned ground beef mixed with canned vegetables, beef gravy, and Worcestershire sauce created a thick, savory filling. You'd spoon this into a ring mold or arrange it in a circle on a baking sheet. Refrigerated biscuit dough, Pillsbury became the hero here, got separated and arranged around the beef mixture like a wreath. As it baked, the biscuits puffed up golden and fluffy, creating an edible fence around the beef center. You'd invert it onto a serving platter, the biscuits now forming a crown around the meat filling. Guests could tear off biscuits and scoop the beef mixture, making it interactive dining before that was even a concept. This was Betty Crocker creativity at its finest. Sloppy Joes. An Iowa cook named Joe invented this messy masterpiece in the 1930s, creating an American icon that defined casual family dinners for generations. The name said it all. These sandwiches were deliberately, gloriously sloppy, and kids loved the rebellious permission to make a mess. Ground beef browned until crumbly, then simmered with tomato sauce, ketchup, brown sugar, vinegar, Worcestershire sauce, mustard, and finely diced onions and peppers. The mixture cooked down until thick enough to barely stay on a bun, but loose enough to require multiple napkins. The sweet, tangy, savory sauce coated every morsel of beef, creating that addictive flavor that made seconds inevitable. Served on soft hamburger buns that soaked up the extra sauce, these weren't refined dining. They were everything casual American food represented. School cafeterias adopted them, summer camps served them, and families made them weekly because they were cheap, fast, and universally loved. The mess was part of the charm. Salisbury steak. Civil War Dr. James Salisbury invented this health food in the 1890s, believing minced beef could cure various ailments. By the 1950s, it became TV dinner royalty and weeknight staple. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, egg, finely minced onion, salt, and pepper got formed into oval steaks that mimicked real beef cuts. They'd sear in a hot skillet until deeply browned and crusty. Then, you'd make gravy right in the same pan with flour, beef broth, and sometimes mushrooms. The patties simmered in this rich gravy until cooked through, absorbing flavor while staying tender. The gravy thickened into a luscious brown sauce that demanded mashed potatoes alongside. This was ground beef masquerading as upscale dining, giving families the feeling of eating steak without the steak price. Swanson frozen dinners made it famous, but homemade versions showed up on dinner tables nationwide, proving Americans could elevate humble ingredients through technique and presentation. Taco pie/frito pie. Texas and New Mexico both claim this southwestern invention that brought Tex-Mex to casserole format in the 1960s. The Frito company even printed recipes on their bags, making this corporate-sponsored home cooking. Seasoned ground beef with taco spices, layered into a pie dish with crushed Fritos, refried beans, salsa, and shredded cheddar cheese. Some versions used a cornbread crust, others just relied on Fritos for texture. The casserole baked until cheese melted into gooey submission and the edges crisped up. The Fritos provided salty crunch that stayed surprisingly intact, despite all the moisture, creating textural contrast in every bite. Toppings included sour cream, lettuce, tomatoes, and more crushed Fritos for serving. This was American ingenuity turning snack food into dinner, making something festive from processed ingredients. Ketchup glazed meat patties. The 1950s obsession with ketchup as a universal sauce reached its peak with these simple, yet satisfying patties. Ketchup wasn't just a condiment. It was a cooking ingredient that added sweetness, acidity, and that distinctly American flavor to everything. Ground beef mixed with breadcrumbs, minced onion, egg, salt, and pepper got formed into oval patties. They'd sear in a hot skillet until browned on both sides. Then, you'd make the glaze. Ketchup, brown sugar, vinegar, and Worcestershire sauce whisked together and poured over the patties. The heat transformed this simple mixture into a sticky, caramelized coating that clung to every surface. Some cooks added sliced onions to the pan for extra flavor. These patties simmered in that glaze until cooked through, the sauce reducing into a thick, glossy finish. They weren't fancy, but they delivered big flavor from pantry staples, making them perfect for stretched budgets and hungry families who needed something that tasted special. Beef enchilada casserole. When Americans discovered Mexican food in the 1970s, they immediately casserole-fied it. This deconstructed version eliminated the tedious rolling of individual enchiladas while keeping all the cheesy, saucy appeal. Ground beef browned with taco seasoning mixed with black beans and corn. Corn tortillas got torn into strips and layered in a baking dish with the beef mixture, enchilada sauce, and mountains of shredded cheese, cheddar, and Monterey Jack in equal measure. The layers repeated like lasagna until the dish was full, topped with extra cheese, because the 1970s didn't believe in restraint. After baking at 375 degrees for 35 minutes, the tortillas softened while soaking up all that sauce. The cheese melted into a golden blanket, and the edges crisped into everyone's favorite bites. This was Mexican-American food for the masses, simplified for weeknight cooking, but delivering big, bold flavors that made families feel adventurous and cosmopolitan. Hamburger soup. Depression-era resourcefulness created this soup that stretched 1 pound of beef to feed 8 people. This was survival cooking that didn't taste like deprivation. Ground beef browned with onions, then simmered in beef broth with diced potatoes, carrots, celery, canned tomatoes, and whatever vegetables needed using. Some added barley or rice to increase volume and add heartiness. The soup simmered for an hour, vegetables turning tender while releasing their natural sweetness into the broth. The beef broke into tiny pieces, distributing protein throughout instead of concentrating it. Seasoned simply with salt, pepper, bay leaves, and thyme, this let the ingredients speak for themselves. The result was a thick, hearty soup that felt more substantial than its humble ingredients suggested. Served with crackers or cornbread, this one-pot wonder provided complete nutrition when budgets were tight. Modern minestrone can't touch the comforting simplicity of hamburger soup that kept families fed when times got tough. Hamburger spoon-bread casserole. Southern comfort met Western practicality in this cornbread-topped beef casserole that combined 2 regional classics. Spoon-bread, that soft, almost pudding-like cornbread from the South, became the crowning glory of seasoned ground beef. The beef layer cooked with onions, garlic, chili powder, cumin, and tomato sauce until thick and deeply flavored. This spread into a baking dish as the foundation. The spoon-bread topping mixed cornmeal, flour, milk, eggs, butter, and a touch of sugar, creating a batter that poured over the beef like liquid gold. As it baked, the cornbread layer puffed up, turning golden brown while staying creamy underneath where it touched the beef. The meat's moisture kept the bottom custardy, while the top crisped beautifully. Cutting into it revealed distinct layers that somehow melded together perfectly. This was 2 complete dishes in one pan, showing the efficiency mindset that defined mid-century American cooking, when time and money were equally precious. Mock Swiss steak. When real Swiss steak was too expensive, resourceful cooks created this ground beef version that delivered similar satisfaction. Swiss steak traditionally used tough round steak pounded and braised, but this shortcut version brought those flavors to budget-conscious tables. Ground beef formed into thick patties got dredged in seasoned flour, then browned until crusty. Sliced onions, bell peppers, and canned tomatoes created the braising liquid, seasoned with Worcestershire sauce, garlic, salt, and pepper. The patties nestled into this mixture and simmered covered for 45 minutes until the sauce thickened and the flavors melded. The vegetables broke down into a chunky sauce that clung to the tender patties. Served over rice, noodles, or mashed potatoes to soak up every drop of sauce, this was working-class ingenuity at its finest. Nobody was fooled into thinking this was real Swiss steak, but it delivered that same braised, tender, tomatoey satisfaction that made the original famous. Beef macaroni loaf. The 1940s produced this bizarre yet beloved combination that merged meatloaf with macaroni and cheese. This was efficiency cooking at its most audacious. Why make 2 dishes when you could slam them together? Ground beef mixed with cooked elbow macaroni, condensed tomato soup, shredded cheese, beaten eggs, breadcrumbs, and diced onions. This strange mixture got packed into a loaf pan and baked until firm enough to slice. The top developed a slightly crusty exterior, while the inside stayed moist from all that tomato soup and cheese. When sliced, it revealed a mosaic of macaroni suspended in seasoned beef, held together by melted cheese and eggs. Some families served it with additional tomato sauce, while others preferred ketchup. This was the ultimate kid-pleasing dinner that confused adults but somehow worked. It wasn't elegant, but it was practical, filling, and used ingredients every pantry contained. Leftovers even made decent sandwiches, proving its versatility. Dutch oven meatloaf with crackers. Pioneer cooking techniques met Depression-era economy in this meatloaf that used crushed crackers instead of breadcrumbs. Dutch ovens, those heavy cast-iron pots that pioneer families used over campfires, became kitchen staples that produced superior meatloaf through even heat distribution. Ground beef mixed with crushed saltine crackers, milk, eggs, minced onion, ketchup, Worcestershire sauce, salt, and pepper. The crackers absorbed moisture while keeping the loaf tender and preventing that dry, crumbly texture that plagued lesser meatloaves. This mixture formed into a loaf shape and went into a preheated Dutch oven with a bit of oil. The heavy lid trapped moisture, essentially steaming and baking simultaneously. After an hour, you'd remove the lid and brush the top with a ketchup glaze, letting it caramelize for 15 more minutes. The result was a mahogany-colored exterior, with a tender, flavorful interior that sliced cleanly. This was American comfort food, perfected through generations of practical experience. Ragmob casserole. The oddly named Ragmob casserole emerged from 1960s church cookbooks, probably named for its shaggy appearance of noodles poking out. This was potluck food designed to feed crowds without breaking the church budget. Ground beef browned with onions mixed with egg noodles, cream of mushroom soup, sour cream, and frozen mixed vegetables. Everything stirred together and went into a casserole dish, topped with crushed potato chips or fried onions for crunch. The casserole baked until bubbly, the noodles absorbing all that creamy sauce while softening to perfect tenderness. The crushed topping provided textural contrast that made every bite interesting. This wasn't haute cuisine, but it represented community cooking where everyone brought a dish and nobody went hungry. The name might sound strange now, but back then, it was memorable enough to get the recipe requested repeatedly. This was food that built church communities and neighborhood bonds, one casserole at a time. Corn chip beef bake. The processed food revolution of the 1960s created this crunchy casserole that turned Fritos into a legitimate ingredient. Companies pushed their products into recipes, and homemakers embraced the convenience and novelty. Seasoned ground beef mixed with cream-style corn, tomato sauce, sliced olives, and taco seasoning spread into a baking dish. A thick layer of corn chips pressed into the beef mixture, creating a crunchy middle layer. More beef mixture went on top, finished with shredded cheese. As it baked, the bottom layer of chips softened slightly, while maintaining crunch. The middle layer stayed crispy, and the top cheese melted into golden perfection. The combination of soft, creamy beef with crunchy chips in every bite created addictive texture contrast. This was junk food elevated to dinner status, reflecting America's growing embrace of processed convenience foods as legitimate cooking ingredients rather than guilty pleasures. Sloppy Joe pie. Taking the beloved Sloppy Joe concept and encasing it in pie crust created this handheld dinner invention from the 1970s. This was portable, mess-free eating that still delivered those familiar flavors. Traditional Sloppy Joe filling got thickened extra heavy to prevent sogginess in the crust. Pie dough lined individual ramekins or muffin tins, filled with the meat mixture, topped with another piece of dough, edges crimped and sealed tight. These little pies baked until the crust turned golden and flaky. The filling bubbled through vent holes, and the whole thing could be picked up and eaten like a Hot Pocket before Hot Pockets existed. Kids could take them in lunchboxes. Adults could eat them in the car, and everyone got that Sloppy Joe taste without the mess. This represented American ingenuity, trying to solve the eternal problem of eating while doing something else. Efficiency, even in consuming dinner. Mock prime rib patties. The audacity of calling anything made with ground beef prime rib perfectly captured mid-century American optimism and marketing creativity. These patties tried to deliver upscale flavor from downscale ingredients. Ground beef mixed with beef bouillon, soy sauce, Worcestershire sauce, garlic powder, onion powder, and black pepper created a deeply savory mixture. Formed into thick patties, they'd sear hard in a hot cast-iron skillet, developing a mahogany crust. Then, they'd finish in the oven, cooking through while staying juicy. The combination of umami-rich ingredients created a beefy intensity that punched above ground beef's usual weight class. Served with horseradish cream sauce and roasted potatoes, this was Sunday dinner masquerading as special occasion food. Nobody truly believed these were prime rib, but that didn't matter. They tasted special, made families feel fancy, and cost a fraction of actual prime rib. This was aspirational cooking for people with champagne taste on beer budgets. Midwest meat pie, also called hamburger pie or tater tot casserole. This Midwestern staple appeared at every potluck from Minnesota to Missouri throughout the 1970s and 80s. Ground beef browned with onions and mixed with cream of mushroom soup, frozen vegetables, and Worcestershire sauce created the savory base. This spread into a casserole dish, topped with frozen tater tots, arranged in neat rows like little soldiers. The casserole baked until the tater tots turned crispy, golden brown. The filling bubbled up between them, and the kitchen smelled like pure comfort. Some versions added shredded cheese between the meat and tots for extra indulgence. Each serving delivered crispy potato exterior with creamy beef filling underneath. The perfect marriage of textures. This was Midwest pragmatism at its finest, taking frozen convenience foods and transforming them into beloved family traditions. County fairs, church suppers, and family reunions weren't complete without someone bringing meat pie. Chia hot dish. Minnesota's answer to casserole culture. Hot dish represented Lutheran church basement, cooking at its most essential. Ground beef browned with onions combined with cream of mushroom soup, beef broth, uncooked white rice, and frozen vegetables. Everything went into a baking dish covered tightly with foil. The moisture from the soup and broth steamed the rice to tender perfection, while the beef and vegetables melded together. The foil trapped every bit of steam, essentially creating a self-contained cooking environment. After an hour in the oven, you'd remove the foil to find a cohesive, flavorful one-dish meal that required nothing else except maybe white bread with butter. The rice absorbed all the liquid, becoming creamy, like risotto, but with distinctly Midwestern flavors. This was Minnesota nice in edible form, practical, generous, unpretentious, and designed to feed the entire congregation without fuss. No fancy ingredients, no complicated techniques, just honest food for honest people gathered together in fellowship.
Chili Mac, the ultimate one-pot wonder that turned two pantry staples into pure weeknight magic. In 1974, with gas prices soaring and inflation hitting double digits, American families needed dishes that stretched every dollar. Chili Mac became the working parent's secret weapon. Boil a box of elbow macaroni, dump in 2 cans of Hormel chili, stir over medium heat, and top with shredded cheddar. The whole thing took 15 minutes from start to finish, used one pot, and fed a family of 4 for under $3. The thick, meaty sauce coated every pasta tube perfectly, while the melted cheese created creamy pockets throughout. Mothers joining the workforce found this revolutionary. You could hold down a job and still get dinner on table without collapsing from exhaustion. This was survival cuisine disguised as comfort food, proving easy didn't have to mean bad, just practical. Today's pasta and protein bowls owe everything to this humble 1970s staple. Before we move on to the next food, don't forget to subscribe for more nostalgic videos from the 1930s through the 1980s. Macaroni and cheese with hot dogs. The kid-approved dinner that made Kraft a household deity and became a cultural phenomenon. By mid-1970s, the Blue Box was America's best-selling packaged dinner. Slicing hot dogs into it wasn't lazy, it was culinary genius in your children's eyes. Boil the macaroni 7 minutes, slice Oscar Mayer Franks into quarter-inch coins, drain pasta, stir in orange cheese powder, milk, and margarine. Never butter, always margarine. The sauce turned silky and neon orange, coating every elbow perfectly. Fold in hot dog slices, and you had dinner for four, costing less than $2 in 12 minutes total. The texture was pure comfort. Soft noodles, creamy sauce, hot dogs, both salty and slightly sweet. Kids ate without complaint, negotiation, or drama. For parents juggling work and housework during the 1973 to 1975 recession, that was worth its weight in gold. This captured the 1970s faith in food technology. Shepherd's pie. The British import transformed into the ultimate American leftover disposal system. Families discovered this layered casserole could absorb Sunday's roast beef remnants, Monday's mashed potatoes, and whatever vegetables languished in the crisper. Brown ground beef with onions until crumbly, add canned mixed vegetables, pour in jarred beef gravy, season with Worcestershire sauce, spread into casserole dish. The crowning glory was thick mashed potatoes. Yesterday's dried out ones actually worked better because they held shape. Fork the top into decorative peaks, dot with butter, bake at 375 degrees until potatoes formed golden crust and filling bubbled around edges. What emerged was pure comfort, crispy potato peaks giving way to creamy mash, savory meat and gravy, vegetables soft and sweet. Each forkful delivered multiple textures and temperatures. This represented resourcefulness as virtue, proving yesterday's leftovers could become today's triumph during an era when waste not, want not returned as more than quaint saying.